Su Tangyue, a migrant worker from Tianxuan, died suddenly while working overtime. Good news. Dressed as the eldest daughter of the Marquis' mansion, she doesn't have to worry about food and clothing. Bad news. Bound to the struggle system, if you don't fight, you will die. At first, Su Tangyue didn't care about it. She only wanted to live with rotten salted fish. The next day, she began to have nosebleeds and pain everywhere. The struggle system means that if you continue to salty fish, you will die, and you must strive to the peak of your life. Su Tangyue reluctantly agreed and had not yet figured out how to fight, leaving an extra space in her eyebrows. With a trial-and-error mentality, she was farming in the space and unexpectedly discovered that farming increased her health. Okay, farming is another way of putting things aside, it's better than working. However, after planting vegetables for a few days, a mysterious fairy palace appeared over the capital, and the master calculated that a fairy had descended. The emperor sent the sixth prince to search for the immortal. The sixth prince pointed at Su Tangyue and said, "You, red mole, plant vegetables. You are an immortal. Come back to Beijing and benefit the people." Su Tangyue immediately denied, "I've found the wrong person. She doesn't want to benefit the people, she wants to be a salted fish." Result: saving the gentle young master who fell into the water and inviting him to cook, she instantly increased her health by 30 days. And then the path became strange and strange: save the fallen crown prince and increase health. Save refugees and increase health. Make secret plans and increase health. It's broken, it's broken. How come everyone in the capital knows that she has traveled through time? Begging her to benefit the people. Family members, who knows? I swear to death not to choose a day laborer. Small theater. Su Tangyue. System. What about the agreed vegetable planting? System. Weak, helpless, and pitiful, how did I know you had space? Whimpering keywords of the novel. The queen arranges rotten vegetables, the entire capital crazily competes for spiritual plants without pop-ups. The queen arranges rotten vegetables, the entire capital crazily competes for spiritual plants. Download the complete set of TXT, The Queen Arranges Rotten Vegetables, and the entire capital crazily competes for spiritual plants. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. The Immortal Palace appears again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Immortal Palace appears again on the 15th day of each month. Dazzling palaces once again appeared over the capital. The palace is suspended above the capital city, shrouded in the full moon, appearing faintly and beautifully, as if it comes from a fairy world. Although its appearance is short each time, its magnificent appearance always triggers infinite imagination among the people. Look, the Immortal Palace has appeared again. I really want to go inside and take a look. Heaven bless everyone. Time flies so slowly, we only see each other once a month. Will the palace fall down? The people are discussing and curious about the origin of the mysterious palace, while also carrying reverence and worship. In the palace, as the ruler of a country, the emperor is staring at the palace by the window. What does this palace really mean? Is it auspicious from heaven or a call to disaster in the country? How could the emperor be deaf, blind, and ignorant, yet none of his civil and military officials could relieve his worries? Tomorrow, I will personally visit the Zhenghua temple to request to see Master Huixing pass. As the emperor's words fell, the palace in the sky slowly dissipated, leaving only people with endless memories. In a small villa in the suburbs of Beijing, Su Tangyue was leaning on the bed, crossing her legs, looking idle, holding a book in her hand, occasionally emitting bursts of laughter. My miss, don't look at the painting notebook anymore. The fairy palace just appeared again, it's so beautiful. Tao Hong took a small step and ran to the bedside, working hard to provide comfort to the master. Su Tangyue threw away her notebook and sat up, pinching her pink and chubby face. She said bitterly, damn it, the Immortal Palace is just a place where gold and jade are hidden behind the scenes. Speaking, he wiped away the non-existent tears with his sleeve. Tao Hong broke free from her claws and said, "Miss, it seems like you've been inside before." Su Tangyue patted the bed, filled with indignation. Of course I haven't been inside before, but just thinking about it, I know that the owner of that mansion must have spent all his money on repairing the exterior walls, showing off and making others admire it. What kind of interior has been repaired is invisible to others. Peach red starry eyes, Miss is really impressive. The owner of this mansion is really vain. I won't see it again next month, so I'll stay with Mississippi. Su Tangyue quickly waved her hand and said, "It's a pity not to appreciate such a beautiful appearance. You need to take a closer look and improve your aesthetics." Tao Hong nodded, she will definitely improve herself well. After returning to the Marquis' mansion, she won't embarrass the young lady and let her hit those people hard in the face. I hope Miss can return to the Marquis' mansion as soon as possible. If Su Tangyue knew about Tao Hong's rich psychological activities, she would definitely scold her immediately. Why curse me when I treat you so well? She just hopes that the vegetables in the yard will ripen soon, so that she can start doing things quietly. On the second day, with a faint dawn, the emperor went to the Zhenghua temple with a grand army of civil and military officials. To demonstrate his sincerity, the emperor personally climbed the Tongtian staircase in front of the Zhenghua temple. A whole 1,000 steps, nearly half 100 emperors gritted their teeth and wiped their sweat, completing the entire journey. At the entrance of the temple, bow down and salute hand in hand. A celestial anomaly may harm the people of the world. On behalf of the people of the world, I respectfully invite Master Huisheng to leave the pass. It is rumored that Master Huisheng received the teachings of the will of heaven, stabilizing the peace of the world, and not going out or closing the door in case of major events. The emperor bent down, all the officials knelt down, and there was no movement for a whole 15 minutes. Is it possible that such a vision in heaven has nothing to do with the blessings and misfortunes of the world? Qiangli Yuyu, living in a different world. The phoenix perches on the southern branch and is now skilled in farming. The red mole on the forehead brings blessings for generations to come. The rich voice echoed through the entire mountain temple, drifting away. The emperor let out a deep sigh, as long as it was a good thing. The officials also discussed extensively, as if treating this sacred and serious place as a court. Go back to court, the emperor shouted sternly. Congratulations to the emperor, the immortal has come to assist us. Heaven bless us all, said Prime Minister Zhang with a bow in the court. Lord Su refused to be outdone and said, Your Majesty, you can rest assured now. God bless everyone. Officials bowed their hands and congratulated in unison. The emperor stroked his beard and said contentedly, the top priority is to find the immortal as soon as possible. Don't let the immortal suffer any injustice. The emperor looked at his beloved courtiers, thinking of finding a reliable and loyal person to search for them. Prime Minister Zhang, TSK, he's too old to run for 2 days, and he'll have to leave. Several ministers, cough cough cough, you must never leave the capital, otherwise the court will not be able to turn. Marquis Su would eat, drink, and have fun. Humph, if it weren't for holding his own little braid, he would have been demoted long ago. My cold-hearted and indifferent sixth prince is quite impressive, with a fairy-like demeanor. With a majestic posture, order the sixth prince Qi Chenhong to search for the immortal and make sure to invite him to the capital within 3 months. Yes, my courtier accepts the order. His voice was as cold as winter ice and snow. The days passed leisurely, and rumors about the arrival of immortals in the capital were lively and varied. The people all looked forward to the arrival of immortals in the capital. Like a secluded village in the suburbs of Beijing. Tao Hong, come and see the little cabbage that I have grown, Mississippi. Su Tangyue, dressed in coarse cloth, held high the watery vegetables. Under the sunshine, the red mole on her forehead added a touch of sanctity. Tao Hong came over with a basin of clean water and praised thoughtlessly, "Miss, she's too amazing. She can even grow so watery cabbage." Su Tangyue washed her hands happily and said, "Today, Miss, I will personally cook a course of clear and roasted cabbage for you." Without waiting for Peach Blossom to stop her, Su Tangyue was already running to the kitchen with enthusiasm. Tao Hong quickly followed and said, "Miss, please wait for me." After being smoked and burned, the master and servant looked at a plate of slightly burnt vegetables, but neither of them moved their chopsticks. "Cough cough, Peach Red, try it quickly. This is the first dish made by your young lady. Miss, I buried 10 taels of silver in the peach tree in the backyard. If I encounter any misfortune, remember to help me spend it," said Tao Hong with a tragic and heroic expression. After speaking, he picked up a pair of burnt black vegetables and put them in his mouth. "Chew it twice, oh, it seems like it's not bad." Peach Red opened her sparkling eyes and said, "Miss, you are truly a divine being, delicious. This girl won't have any taste problems, will she?" Su Tangyue hesitated and took a bite. "This is too delicious, isn't it? The fragrance of vegetables covers all the flavors, even the burnt taste seems to have become the perfect seasoning flavor." Su Tangyue lifted the broken hair between her forehead and said with a pretentious tone, "It's just average. Don't worship me too much. Being infatuated with me has no effect. Miss, the Marquis is here." A servant outside the door interrupted the master and servant. Su Tangyue looked up and found that her father had already walked to the door with his head held high. She quickly got up to welcome him. "Dad, why are you here? Who is this young master?" Beside his father was a tall and handsome man with a cold and cool temperament. Perhaps it was a blind date for her, and she rubbed her hands eagerly, her eyes constantly lingering on the man. "You cannot be reckless, this is His Highness the 6th Prince." Marquis Su put on the airs of being a father. "Having a noble status, I can't afford to be provoked, but it's a pity that I have such a good appearance." Su Tangyue smiled obsequiously and bowed obediently. "I have seen His Highness the 6th Prince. I heard you have a red mole on your forehead." Qi Jingchen looked expressionlessly at the legitimate daughter of the Marquis' mansion with a black and gray face. Su Tangyue wiped her forehead with her hand, revealing a small but crimson mole on her eyebrows, and then took a step forward to look up for him to see clearly. But Qi Jingchen staggered back a step, with a hint of forbearance on his face and a chill in his voice. "Do you know how to farm?" Su Tangyue pouted at the vegetable garden in the courtyard again. This cleanliness-obsessed prince may not be a fool. Such a crude person could actually be a fairy. Qi Jingchen suppressed his displeasure and bowed, "Please return to the capital and benefit all the people. A cute new one, please take good care of it and not hesitate to teach. Thank you for reading to every baby, and I wish everyone success in all things, health, and wealth." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. The Beautiful Man Who Falls into the Water. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 3. Miss is going to tear the umbrella again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Miss is going to tear the umbrella again. The magnificent Ho's mansion passes through the stacked pavilions to the main courtyard of carved beams and painted rafters. A glamorous little chubby man grabbed the sleeve of a noblewoman and wailed loudly, as if he wanted to flip the roof over before he would give up. "I'm going to eat vegetables." "Just eat that vegetable." The noblewoman rubbed her temples helplessly and turned her head to look at the woman beside her. "Has Marquis not come back yet?" "Madame Hui, the Marquis and his colleagues have gone to drink, and I'm afraid they won't be able to come back until night," said Lu Mama, bowing down. Madame Ho pondered for a moment and ordered, "Try to inquire about Lord Ho's itinerary yesterday, and make sure to understand the origin of the vegetables." Su Tangyue had no idea that her vegetables had been noticed. After seeing off Xie Jishuan yesterday, she tossed and turned all night. "I am extremely happy about the sudden increase in health, but I am annoyed because I cannot understand why. Why couldn't Xie Zhishuan drop more water yesterday? Isn't it fun to fall into the water? Forget it, it's not a bad thing to be left or right. Su Tangyue rubbed the messy chicken coop head and said, Peach Red, prepare a car and go inspect the shop. TSK, the shopkeepers are going to have bad luck again. The young lady clearly fell in love at first sight with yesterday's young master, fell ill with longing, couldn't help but love, and harbored resentment. My beloved needs to be held, so I can only vent my anger on the unpopular shopkeepers. Zhuke Street, the busiest street in the capital, is bustling with vendors hawking and butlers welcoming and escorting, bustling with traffic. A simple-looking carriage stopped straight at the shop at the center of the street. Linglong Pavilion. The shopkeeper Wang, who was observing and listening from all directions in the shop, had already been waiting at the door. He personally set up a carriage stool and bent down to wait for someone to get off. A pair of slender jade hands flicked open the car curtain, and without waiting for the maid's armrest, they jumped onto the ground cleanly. If it weren't for their delicate figure, with a peach-pink fairy-like face, it would have been suspected that they were a quirky man wearing a skirt. Seeing this, the steward lowered his body a bit and secretly wiped the corners of his eyes with his sleeve. Shout Young. Miss has come to tear the umbrella again. Close the door, thank you, prepare the ledger. Before the shopkeeper Wang could respond, Su Tangyue walked straight to the shop. The layout of the shop is simple, with only rows of counters arranged horizontally. The accessories on the counters are neatly arranged and the prices are indicated. At each counter, there is an eloquent servant and a clever maid waiting. The servant introduces the jewelry, and the maid is responsible for trying it on for the guests, complimenting each other. With just a brief glance, Su Tangyue noticed the problem. A servant even recommended a pair of round white jade earrings to a round-faced girl with slightly yellow skin. Alas, this is to make this girl and the jade pendant more round than anyone else. Or should this girl admit that she is not innocent enough? Su Tangyue frowned and looked in that direction, and Tao Hong instantly understood and went to solve it. Why did such a little moth come out? Shopkeeper Wang was so scared that he wiped his cold sweat and immediately led her to the main house on the second floor, afraid that she would take another look at the store. As soon as Su Tangyue sat down, the shopkeeper Wang quickly offered her cool chrysanthemum tea, and even stood behind her, gently shaking a folding fan. Su Tangyue took a generous sip of tea and flipped through her account book to carefully check. Time slowly passed, and Su Tangyue gradually entered a better state. Her heart also calmed down, and her movements in her hands were slow and steady. She flipped through the pages one by one, occasionally using strange black charcoal pens to write calculations on the paper. However, in half an hour, the two thick ledgers were verified. Even the shopkeeper Wang, who was used to the young lady's ability to calculate, was once again amazed. I saw her put down her ink brush, straightened up, and Wang's shopkeeper's small heart was immediately suspended high. This month's revenue is 10% lower than last year at this time. Su Tangyue hit the nail on the head. This year's Princess Chang's flower viewing banquet has been postponed to next month, and all the ladies are waiting for the next month to compete with each other. Manager Wang responded cautiously. Su Tangyue nodded, and the flower appreciation banquet at the Princess Chang's house was like a modern blind date. The young ladies in Beijing wished to spend the most money to buy the most luxurious jewelry to decorate themselves and find a good husband. Although Su Tangyue never goes to such occasions, she hopes that the more flower banquets there are, the better, after all really making money. Miss, a young master just arrived at the store and refused to leave. He said he wanted all the white jade jewelry in the store, which was very urgent. A servant suddenly came in and reported. TSK, what a 205 unjust big head. Pooh. Relatives. This is a homeless relative. Sell it to him. Sell the rest of last year to him as well. The customer is the Jade Emperor. How can we extrapolate the Jade Emperor? We must double the customer's requirements. Su Tangyue's face was full of smiles, and she was so excited that she only patted the table. The previous anxious emotions had long been forgotten. Ask all the staff to help organize the white jade jewelry. By the way, Peach Blossom, let the round pendant servant come in. Su Tangyue crossed her legs, sipping tea and leisurely giving orders. She wants to see how such a tasteless guy was recruited. Miss, please don't dismiss the villain. The villain can do anything. The villain's mother is sick in bed and can't stop this job. The servant knelt as soon as he entered the door, and then burst into tears, crying as if the sky had collapsed. Su Tangyue was startled. Isn't it reasonable for her to be so ferocious? She carefully scrutinized the servant, who was 15 or 16 years old. Although his agile and thin figure resembled a monkey, his black and bright eyes were somewhat shy and cramped, showing no shrewdness at all. It doesn't seem like a servant who does odd jobs all year round. The shopkeeper Wang sighed inwardly and stood up. Miss, this kid's name is Li Haod. He has studied for a few years and is a well-known filial son scholar. He was supposed to end this year. But 6 months ago, my mother was plagued by a serious illness. He immediately took off his long shirt and started doing odd jobs. He did whatever the salary was high, just to treat my mother's illness. He was only recruited by me this month. Wang, the shopkeeper, saw the young lady drinking tea as usual, pondered for a moment, and continued, deducting half a month's salary from him. I will teach and instruct him, and then let him work. Does the young lady think it's good? Su Tangyue rubbed the teacup and looked at the thin and weak man with a straight back, pondering for a moment. Let go of the pride of being a scholar and become a servant, without regret. Li Haod raised his head, his eyes filled with determination, and his tone was even more decisive. As long as I can cure my mother, I will never regret not studying in this life. My mother worked hard all her life, raising him alone and even doing laundry for others in the winter just to earn him money for studying. Now that my mother is sick, if he disregards continuing his studies, it will be a waste of my mother's years of hard work and 10 years of hard study. What a young scholar who truly understood the books of sages. Su Tangyue strongly praised in her heart that there are too many pedantic people in this era who are foolish in reading. They really don't listen to things outside the window, only reading books of sages and relying on squeezing the flesh and blood of their family to enrich themselves. I will support you in studying and achieving fame, searching for famous doctors in the capital. As long as your mother's illness is treated, I will ensure that you have no worries. Su Tangyue said with a resounding voice. Upon hearing this, Li Haod showed no joy and replied calmly, Miss, what do you want? One day you will be on the top of the leaderboard, don't forget my kindness today. Okay. As long as he can cure my mother, he will spare no effort to go up the Sword Mountain and down the Sea of Fire. Su Tangyue suddenly smiled as the sunlight outside the window shone on her, as if crossing a layer of golden light for her. And Li Haod was even more stunned. Even years later, when he reached a high position, he always remembered a girl who seemed like a god and instantly changed his fate. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Turns out he's a big shot. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Turns out he's a big shot. After patrolling all the shops, bidding farewell to the 10-year-old shopkeepers who had been ravaged, Su Tangyue, who was full of energy, returned to the village in the sunset. A servant quickly approached and respectfully said, Miss, Master Xia has arrived. He is currently drinking in the main courtyard. Before the servant could finish speaking, the young lady lifted her skirt and ran all the way to the main courtyard. As soon as Su Tangyue arrived at the gate, she saw Xia Zhishuan standing in front of the main house, and the two of them looked at each other from afar across the courtyard. Xia Zhishuan's face was still a bit pale, but it was precisely this sickly appearance that made him look like a person in the world. He is wearing a moonlit brocade robe today, embroidered with cloud patterns on silver thread. and hanging a high-quality sheepskin white jade around his waist, showcasing the posture of a stranger's jade. Undoubtedly the most stunning beauty in the capital, Princess Chang's only son Xie Zhishuan. Xie Zhishuan's gaze also stopped at Su Tangyue, who came against the light. A simple flying bun tied up her hair high, creating a face that was only the size of a palm. Her eyes flowed like autumn waves, and her cherry-like delicate and full lips were not tinged with red. A hint of crimson on her eyebrows added a touch of sanctity to her aura. Her smooth forehead was filled with sweat, like the morning dew on a delicate flower. The clothes were the same plain-colored dress as the day she fell into the water, but the difference was that on that day, she emerged from the water like a newly entered female bodhisattva, sacred and cold. Today she is the blooming hibiscus, fresh and lively. Xie Zhishuan strode up to Su Tangyue and handed her a handkerchief. "I'm right here, why don't you slow down?" His voice was tinged with a smile, and his tone was clear and warm, like the sound of jade. Listening to it made Su Tangyue's heart tingle. Su Tangyue took the handkerchief in a daze, roaring endlessly from the bottom of her heart, "Chasing stars is a successful day. He is truly a perfect idol." Not bad, Su Tangyue has now become a fan of Xie Zhishuan. Who can refuse a sick beauty who looks good and may even give her life? Su Tangyue suppressed her flower obsession in her heart before noticing the boxes piled up in the yard. "Master Xie, is this?" Su Tangyue pointed to the boxes and looked at him in confusion. Xie Zhishuan waved his hand and ordered the servants to open the box. Miss Su's life-saving kindness must be remembered in her heart. These are just small intentions, Miss Su must not refuse. Desolate silk, antique treasures, hairpin rings and jewelry, everything is available, dazzling the onlookers. Wait, how come that big box of white jade jewelry looks so familiar? Big injustice. Su Tangyue looked at the jewelry and then at the person in front of her, her eyes turning again and again. Master Xie has such a good eye, and he is also very atmospheric. He gave me such a big box of beautiful white jade jewelry. Look, it's truly her love for Su Tangyue, how generous. Giving gifts to girls is all about wrapping up the entire store. What a peerless good man. Xie Zhishuan was very happy to see her gaze fixed on the white jade jewelry. She really likes white jade. After seeing her twice, she only had a white jade hairpin tied around her whole body. Moreover, Baiyu is truly a match for her. Only with her holy and lively appearance can she blend Baiyu's coldness into herself, making her a mere accompaniment. So, I must go to Linglong Pavilion a few more times. Watching the whole process blush on the side, she was now stunned. Her young lady changed her face so quickly, as if she had cursed another person of 205 relatives along the way. But that young Master Xie smiled so beautifully, truly worthy of being the most gentle and refined young master in the capital. The two of them could not hear the roast in Peach's heart, and walked into the house side by side. From the back, they looked like a pair of perfect people. "Thank you, saving you that day was a simple task. I'll take today's gift and don't be so polite in the future." Su Tangyue sat on the chair and watched Xie Zhishuan sincerely say. Although she loves wealth, she takes it in a proper way. Saving lives is not for the sake of seeking anything. Xie Zhishuan paused as he tasted the tea in his hand, and when he saw the sincerity in Su Tangyue's eyes, he replied with a faint smile. "Okay, according to the girl's words. No matter who fell into the water, she would save the situation on that day. She has nothing to do with herself." Xie Zhishuan's heart was both appreciating her sincerity and filled with a hint of unfamiliar sourness. Seeing his response, Su Tangyue let go of her worries. Speaking of which, Xie Zhishuan was also considered half of her benefactor. She had already received an additional 30 days of health points, which was originally considered a non-debt. If he treats her as a benefactor and appreciates her every day in the future, she won't feel too good in her heart. "Master Xie, do you have any favorite dishes or taboos?" We didn't treat you well last time, so we will definitely treat you well today. Xie Zhishuan put down his teacup, stood up and arched his hand. It's already late at night. Today, I have broken the rules and dare not trouble you anymore. Although the customs of the Qi dynasty were open, men entering and leaving women's homes late at night would always damage their reputation. She is the legitimate daughter of the Marquis' mansion, and there will always be a chance to meet again in the future. The night was slightly dewy, and Xie Zhishuan returned to Princess Chang's mansion. Princess Chang sat in the pavilion in the front yard. Xie Zhi's must-pass path back to the yard, eating pastries and admiring the flowers and scenery. Qiu Sui, you see, someone has finally returned from giving gifts. I thought he had given himself too. The long princess pointed to Xie Zhishuan as she walked slowly, holding her wine glass. Autumn Sui smiled back and said, Princess, as you know, the young master has always valued kindness and righteousness the most. The eldest princess looked at her son, who saluted and said jokingly, Yes, I have specially found a box of white jade jewelry for his benefactor, and I will personally deliver it. Originally, she was going to personally deliver a gift to the door to thank the girl who saved her son. Moreover, with her status as the eldest princess, she can make this girl feel much better in the capital. But the son who values etiquette the most will personally give gifts whatever he says, and for this reason, he even said that the identity of the eldest princess would scare the Su family girl. What a big joke. Miss Su is also the eldest daughter of the Marquis' mansion, and she doesn't even have this kind of upbringing. But Miss Su is indeed a pitiful person. The eldest daughter of the Su family was the daughter of the original husband of Marquis Su. Marquis Ho's wife suffered a lot of bleeding when she gave birth to her. A few years later, Marquis Su married a new person, and from then on, Su Tangyue lived under his stepmother. Although there is an elder brother of the same mother who can be relied on, men are always reluctant to interfere in the inner courtyard, and there are always areas that they cannot afford. And Lady Xinho was also a skilled figure. She never treated Su Tangyue harshly, but never mentioned this legitimate eldest daughter in front of others. There were no rumors of the legitimate eldest daughter of the Su family in the vast capital, as if there was no such person. Nowadays, they are forced to live on the outskirts of the countryside, and they are also considered unique among the ladies in the capital. However, it can make Suner lose the skill of balance and become entangled in 7 emotions and 6 desires. This Su's daughter should have a good chance to meet her. Mother, how does the wine from Drunken Moon Tower taste? Xie Zhishuan smiled faintly, distant and polite, making it impossible to pick a single mistake. What a kid, he's threatening his mother. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. The System of Pitying People. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. The System of Pitying People. Hurry up and get back to your bamboo shadow garden. The long princess gritted her teeth and said in a piercing voice. Xie Zhishuan bowed and then ran left, flowing with clouds and flowing water, truly embodying the nobility of a noble young master. When the son.in.law comes back, let him sleep directly in the study. The long princess slapped her teacup on the stone table. Who made him set the rule not to drink, and now his son has taken control of her. Should be punished. Autumn ears cover their mouths and secretly smile, responding. Anyway, the princess will eventually be unable to resist the husband's ups and downs, and will still let him return to his room. Now, with such fangs and claws, it's nothing more than a fear that the son.in.law might know she's secretly drinking, so it's better to take action first when she comes. The bamboo shadow garden is located in the deepest part of the princess's mansion, but it's not that Xie Zhishuan is not favored or neglected, but that Xie Zhishuan likes seclusion and insists on living in this secluded place. The eldest princess is worried about her son's urgent need to leave the mansion, so she specially opened a corner door in the bamboo shadow garden, leading directly to the main street. The bamboo shadow garden is filled with various rare treasures, and Xie Zhi's sought-after items are even more top-notch. The precious rosewood, which is hard to find, has been made into lounge chairs and placed randomly in the small pavilion in the bamboo forest. Xie Zhishuan was dressed in a white robe, with his hair casually flowing in half dry and half wet. The once comfortable and leisurely young master showed his superior posture at the moment when he restrained his smile. "Got it," Xie Zhishuan said, with his hands behind his back and his eyes as if soaked in a layer of ice, completely devoid of the warmth and elegance of the daytime. A man dressed in black knelt down on one knee and clasped his fists. "Master, I apologize. Those people disappeared completely after Miss Su went into the water. I couldn't find them," he said. "Send 2 women to secretly protect her." Xie Zhishuan rubbed the fat white jade pendant around his waist, his voice finally not as calm as before. The man in black paused for a moment, nodded and said yes, then disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, amidst the vast expanse of green, a bright white was vigorously plowing with a small hoe. Farming, this broken system is just a trap for people," Su Tangyue muttered while waving her small hoe. Working hard to cultivate the land and only gaining 1 day of health every day, even the unscrupulous capitalists in their past lives would feel inferior. Not bad, Su Tangyue came through time travel. In her past life, she was a Tianxuan worker who worked 9 or 6 days a day. The saddest thing was that she didn't have money, a car, or a house. After working hard for several years, she was poor and her pockets were ringing. On an ordinary overtime night, she died suddenly from overwork and dressed up as Su Tangyue, the unlucky one. Su Tangyue, the legitimate eldest daughter of the Tang dynasty Marquis mansion, surprisingly laughed incessantly while reading a notebook, and choked to death with tea when she caught a breath. Then she inherited Su Tangyue's beautiful life. Yes, an extremely beautiful life. Marquis' father is careless and doesn't know how to raise his daughter. As for the stepmother, she was afraid that others would accuse her of abusing her original son, and she never treated her severely in terms of clothing, food, housing, and transportation. She also did not want her original child to be too successful, so she never took her out to attend banquets or forced her to learn piano, chess, calligraphy, and painting. In addition, the rich inheritance of the original owner's biological mother is enough to allow her to spend 10 lifetimes extravagantly. So the original owner's life was just about eating, drinking, and having fun, and it was the highest standard. In Su Tangyue's first year of wearing it, she deeply felt that this was God's compensation for her, making her wishes come true. But just 1 day before this year's Yuan Shao, filled round balls made of glutinous rice. Flour for Lantern Festival, a system called struggle suddenly appeared in my body. What to say, work hard and strive to reach the pinnacle of life. Jokes, now is the pinnacle of her life, she shouldn't strive. Is the lesson of blood and tears from the previous life not enough? But this broken system also says that the current time is stolen, and we must continue to struggle to survive. Of course Su Tangyue doesn't believe it. She eats well and her body is twice as good, unless this world can be lazy to death. But the next day, she began to have nosebleeds and her body began to ache everywhere. Su Tangyue gritted her teeth and agreed to work hard in the future. Only by surviving can she continue to be a salted fish. Reincarnation is not as good as opening a blind box. The current system displays her health bar for 15 hours. When the full moon hung high in the sky that night, Su Tangyue's mole on her eyebrows began to heat up, and she reached out to touch and entered another space. The space is dilapidated, with only a thatched house on the verge of collapse and 2 fields the size of tiles covered in wild grass. In the thatched cottage, there are several bags of seeds. Su Tangyue was completely bewildered by Master Zhang Er, and breaking the system was as if dead and silent. She could only tentatively use the rusty hoe in the thatched cottage to weed and farm, and then the blood bar slowly rose. But there was really nothing that could be done in that space. Su Tangyue finished planting the field, took a bag of seeds, and then came out. That day, the fairy palace began to appear over the capital. Su Tangyue watched the gradually fading blood bars and slept anxiously all night. The next morning, at dawn, Su Tangyue called out to the servant girl to clean up her colorful yard and even bought several large bags of seeds. She worked hard with the purchased seeds for a while, but found that her health bar did not increase. Only by using the seeds in that space can we increase the health bar, and the health bar increases according to the size of the planted field. Apart from the 30 days that Tianxuan contributed, she has been working hard for several months and has only saved 20.8 days of health points so far. 28 days. Black-minded capitalists have to hand over cigarettes when they see this system. Su Tangyue's boundless imagination was interrupted by the peach blossom life miss, whose loud voice frightened Su Tangyue to break 2 vegetables. Miss, someone has arrived at Princess Chang's mansion. Tao Hong said as she took off the hoe and the pitiful vegetable in Su Tangyue's hand. Hurry up and tidy up. Su Tangyue patted the soil in her hands and looked down at her plain cloth skirt. It hasn't been stained with soil yet, so there shouldn't be any disheveled hair or dirty face. Bring me a basin of clear water and pass it on to the main hall, Su Tangyue instructed calmly. Tao Hong stomped her feet. Angry Miss didn't argue. Princess Chang is the largest red thread fairy in the capital. Which lady saw that the people in Princess Chang's mansion were not covered in pink hairpins. Her young lady, sighing in her heart, she obediently brought water to the young lady's hands to clean them, but only took a large piece of ointment and applied it to her hands before taking a break. In the main courtyard, Autumn Sui's hands were intertwined in front of her, her demeanor calm and unassuming, completely unlike a servant, more like a low-key noblewoman. Seeing Su Tangyue enter the door, she bent down to bow, her movements flowing like clouds and water, as if engraved in her bones. She truly deserves to be the person around Princess Chang, even better than the etiquette of the ladies in the capital. She is definitely not an ordinary maid. Auntie, don't be too polite. Su Tangyue quickly helped her up. Autumn Sui took the opportunity to take a glance at her, and she really had a good appearance. Even her plain clothes and dresses could add a bit of a decent aura to her. Her ethereal demeanor was even more rare, and her eyes were exceptionally bright with no desire. Autumn Sui concealed her stunning expression in her heart and presented a beautiful post with both hands, a kind smile on her face. Miss Su, Princess Chang has been thinking of you for a long time and has specially sent me a post for the flower viewing banquet, inviting you to meet me. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The consort-in-law is really ill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The consort-in-law is really ill. Su Tangyue didn't hesitate at all and took the post. Thank you very much, Princess Chang. I will definitely go to the flower viewing banquet to pay my respects to the princess. After the matter was settled, Chiu Sui did not stay long and prepared to leave with his people. I didn't want the little maid beside Su Tangyue, but she personally gave me a refreshing vegetable. The portion given to Princess Chang is even more vibrant and tender, especially pleasing. This Su family girl is meticulous in her work. What a wonderful person. At this moment, Su Tangyue, the wonderful person, was lazily lying on the lounge chair sunbathing. Have you all sent the vegetables? Everyone has given some. Auntie Chiu has given the most. After giving these, there's nothing left in your garden, said Tao Hong in a muffled voice. Silly peach blossom, miss, I can still plant it. I won't shorten your food, Su Tangyue joked to her. These past few days, Su Tangyue wants to experiment with inexplicable conditions that increase her health. Saving people every day is definitely unreasonable. How could there be so many people falling into the water waiting for her to catch them? She could only wait to see if anyone would add health to herself after eating the vegetables. She distributed some of the cooked vegetables to the servants in the village to eat. But the people in the village couldn't even add 1.5 stars to themselves after eating. Is it difficult for this system to still pick people? At a loss, I happened to encounter someone from Princess Chang's mansion. I hope this can be effective. Taohong, let the kitchen make sauce elbows at noon. Farming harms people. Now she can eat and work, and she doesn't look like a spoiled girl at all. At Princess Chang's mansion, the food was neatly and orderly served on the table, with a plate of vegetarian stir-fried vegetables placed in the center. The fresh and tender jade appearance made people swallow their saliva. As soon as Princess Chang was about to use her chopsticks, the Sun.in.law Xie Min strode in. Princess, you don't even want to wait for me to have dinner today. Xie Minjun looked aggrieved on his face, and his beautiful voice was also a bit hoarse. Yesterday, his wife drove him to the study to sleep again, but today he got even worse. He didn't even have time to eat with him, and after much thought, he couldn't figure out what mistake he had made recently. I think it was the stinky kid who provoked her that caused the princess to look for people to spread fire everywhere. The lady really loves him, otherwise how could she get angry with him? After thinking about it, I felt much more comfortable in my heart. I sat next to the long princess and looked at a table of vegetables that were mostly green and vegetarian. My heart skipped a beat and said, Madam, are you feeling unwell? Why did you eat so vegetarian today? The long princess looked at the soft voice that cared about her husband, and then thought of the unreasonable commotion last night. At this moment, she also felt a bit guilty. She quickly explained to the husband the origin of the vegetables on the table, and talked a lot about them. According to Chiu Sui, Miss Su from the Su family is very generous and graceful, with a natural and elegant demeanor that goes without embellishments. Xie Min listened but was very uninterested. What kind of good daughter can Su Marquis raise with his dandy appearance? The eldest princess saw that his interest was declining, so she didn't continue to speak. She picked up a chopstick of vegetables for him and brought the topic back to her. My husband has been working hard lately as a supervisor, and he has caused a cold. This is the first bite for you to take. Xie Min twitched at the corner of his mouth, he was such a clever and sharp-tongued lady. What hard work has caused a cold wind? She insisted on sleeping in the study and missed him in the middle of the night. After a series of twists and turns, the wind blew at night and I got cold. It's just that, as long as she's happy. Looking at the still smiling Princess Chang, Xie Min ate the vegetables in one bite and chewed them carefully. He wants to see if the dishes grown by people who can interest the eldest princess are also unique. It's delicious. I haven't eaten such a delicious dish in many years. Xie Min raised an eyebrow and looked at Princess Chang. Princess Chang turned a blind eye and said, I think you haven't eaten vegetables for many years. The husband-in-law likes meat and doesn't like to eat vegetables. Princess Chang took an elegant bite and her eyes lit up instantly. It was so delicious. Then he directly placed the whole dish in front of her, completely ignoring the little black face of the Son.in. Law. Divide the remaining vegetables into half and send them to the palace later. The long princess, who had eaten and drunk enough, immediately ordered to go down. The current Empress Dowager, her biological mother, has been a vegetarian for many years. Although the imperial chefs in the palace can turn vegetarian food into flowers, there are no such delicious times. Send some to her elderly family for a change. Xie Min, who had only eaten a mouthful of vegetables and had not yet received the attention of his wife, now had an expression of grievance overflowing and spoke up on his own. Actually, it's because I'm old and Sunner is weak. Even after falling into the water, I haven't developed any minor illnesses. Now that I've caught a cold from the wind, I'm getting cold. After speaking, I covered my mouth and coughed for a while. The eldest princess was indeed attracted by this sound and inquired with concern. Do you have a fever? Qiushi, hurry up and have the local doctor come. Xie Min didn't think he was seriously ill, but his head did feel a bit dizzy in the morning. He looked at the worried eyes of the eldest princess and couldn't delay a lot of work in the construction department, so he swallowed his refusal. Quickly, an old man with a white beard carrying a medicine box arrived in the room. After a brief greeting, he began to pulse Xie Min lying in bed. The old man frowned and asked Xie Min to change his hand to cut the pulse. The hearts of both of them were lifted high. The old man stroked his white beard and said, "The husband-in-law is strong and has been taking good care of himself recently." Xie Min naturally didn't believe it. The drowsiness all morning was not just a pretense, and his own nose, "Oh, my nose is breathable, madam, I'm really sick." Xie Min quickly explained. "Doctor, please give it another good diagnosis." The long princess beside her had a terrifying black face and roared, "You're so good, Xie Min. Now you're pretending to be sick and deceiving me." Suddenly, there was a commotion in the room, and when the old doctor came out, his originally neat beard flew up. "I am even more puzzled in my heart. Isn't it a good thing to not be sick?" After stroking his goatee, he smiled and said, "I'm getting old and can't understand the tastes of young people." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. She Wants to Live. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. She Wants to Live. Su Tangyue, who was gnawing on her elbow in the villa, was overjoyed and heard the system's announcement again. Added 20 health points. It seems that someone from the Princess Chang family ate vegetables for lunch and then increased their health. The system called out once, so only one person gave her health. Ken should be the eldest princess. TSK, let's just say that this broken system is snobbish. Only when the relatives of the imperial family eat themselves can they add it, right? Snobbish eyes. However, I knew I had left that annoying sixth prince for dinner last time. Although she looks down on the system's snobbishness, beautiful women can compromise their health. Su Tangyue pondered on her cheeks, but after much thought, she felt that her dishes were unlikely to be eaten by other imperial relatives. She is just a daughter of the Marquis' mansion, still in the boudoir, and has no contact with any imperial relatives or relatives. This matter is difficult to handle. How about opening a high-end restaurant? In this way, when high-ranking officials and nobles come, they will always encounter a relative of the imperial family. In that case, we still need to take some time to visit my grandfather's house and find the little uncle who knows how to do business. When can we achieve freedom of life? Her life is too difficult. Daughter. Marquis Su casually walked in and saw her holding her cheeks in worry. Upon closer inspection, the table was filled with all the food, and in an instant, he strode in and sat down. "Daughter, Dad hasn't eaten yet," said Marquis Su, swallowing his saliva and staring at the stir-fried vegetables on the table without blinking. Su Tangyue was dumbfounded when she saw it. Her father didn't hide it, so she came clearly with a meal to eat. Su Tangyue pushed her elbow towards Lord Su and said sincerely, "Dad, eat some good food and eat more meat." Lord Su's heart warmed at first. His daughter was filial and gave him the only meat dish on the table. Then he saw the teasing in Su Tangyue's eyes. The deep love between father and daughter suddenly dissipated. "Can't we still have meat in our Marquis' mansion? Let the kitchen stir-fry another plate of vegetables for me," he said somewhat foolishly. "There are only 2 vegetables on the table, how can this be enough?" Su Tangyue spread her hands and said, "It's gone." She looked at the few vegetables on the table and said, "The last 2 plates, if you don't eat them, it's gone." Lord Su poked his head and looked at the vegetable fields in the courtyard, which were really bare, with only a few scattered leaves. I was greatly disappointed for a moment, but instinctively I grabbed my chopsticks and wolfed down the vegetables on the plate. This village is big and diverse. Dad needs someone to help you, you don't need to do anything, Su Ho said with a shy face. But Su Tangyue took the folding fan in his hand and opened it with a swoop. "Dad, this dish needs to be grown by my daughter to be delicious." After playing with it twice, she closed it with a slap and then the conversation changed. "But my daughter doesn't plan to plant it anymore. It's too tiring." The Marquis Su listened to this tone of disrespect and wanted to show the authority of being a father, allowing his daughter to order various dishes, but he thought that her daughter was ultimately the daughter of the Marquis family. The other ladies in the capital are all raised by Jin Jiaoyu, but his daughter has to plant vegetables in this small courtyard of the countryside. Look at those little hands with some blisters. He also feels sorry as a father. I won't eat anymore, Dad won't eat anymore. Let's go back to the capital with Dad to enjoy our happiness. Marquis Su thought of Lady Ho again and sighed. There is a private property outside the capital owned by Dad, the hot spring villa. Dad will give it to you. When Dad returns, let someone decorate it well and enjoy it for a while. In the future, Dad will definitely find a good marriage for you, so that you can live a carefree life. If Tangyue were to return to her mansion, there would probably be another stir. Zhang Shi has various grievances, and she is also her elder. Whenever there are any rumors spread, Yu may find it difficult to establish herself in the capital, so she can only find another place that is not considered unfair to her. That hot spring villa has a constant temperature throughout the year, but it is a top-notch place. He used to go there often to play, and he had everything in hand. He just sorted out a boudoir for her, and she could move there in half a month. Su Tangyue, who originally wanted to play tricks on her father, never expected that her father would stop eating delicious vegetables because he cared for her and even give them to her hot spring villa. You still have a conscience, not the kind of old-fashioned dad who only seeks profit. In the future, it's better to share some of the vegetables with him. Although he can't earn health points, he is still considered a family member. Thank you very much, Dad. But my daughter hasn't reached her hairpin yet, so she's not in a hurry to get married. Don't promise me to her without permission, Su Tangyue said confidently with a slightly coquettish tone. I took his hot spring estate for nothing, but I still want to pretend to be a father and son. Lord Su smiled and nodded on her forehead. You silly child, I can still harm you. Marquis Su, who still wanted to continue chatting, was interrupted by the steward who came in. The steward leaned down in Marquis Su's ear and said a few words, and his face suddenly changed. He immediately got up and left. What a scumbag who comes and goes in a hurry, Su Tangyue said as if watching a play. Pooh, miss, pay attention to etiquette. Marquis is your elder. Tao Hong nagged and advised. Su Tangyue covered her ears and said, if you don't listen to Wang Ba reciting the scriptures. In the afternoon, let's take a break and change into men's clothing to listen to books and drink tea, Su Tangyue said with a big wave of her hand. Although she has not yet achieved the freedom of health points, now thanks to the blessings of her two imperial relatives, she has also made a small fortune. Occasionally enjoying life is not lacking in anything. Tao Hong was overwhelmed by joy and had long forgotten to continue persuading the young lady. She followed the young lady to change her clothes in a lively manner. Su Tangyue, who had changed into men's clothing, stepped out of the room and felt the warm sunshine shining on her body, feeling very warm. She extended her arms, closed her eyes, and enjoyed a moment of the beauty of nature. As she slowly opened her eyes, what came straight into her sight was not the clear blue sky, but a sharp arrow piercing through the air and rushing straight towards her face. The arrow feathers stood straight up, demonstrating the determination to win. Su Tangyue's body suddenly froze, as if she had been cast an immobilization spell, forgetting even to dodge and shout. Her pupils dilated, and she didn't even have time to feel fear. Her mind was firmly occupied by a blank space, and her five senses seemed to be lost in an instant. She could only watch the sharp sword rush towards her chest. She instinctively used her palm to block it, and the direct death finally forced her to return to some rationality. Are all her days of hard work going to be in vain? She works so hard to survive in this world, why do these people have to easily take it away? It was like this in her previous life, and it's like this in this life. She just wants to live peacefully. Why is it so difficult? She wants to live on. She wants to survive. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. A Return to Before Liberation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. A return to before liberation. Tears of unwillingness flowed down, like crystal-clear diamonds that were somewhat dazzling under the reflection of sunlight. Then, in an instant, the light shone brightly, making it difficult for everyone to open their eyes. The light quickly dissipated, and the feather arrow fell with a snap. Tangyue instantly collapsed on the ground, holding her chest and panting heavily. Mississippi, noticing the change, Taohong threw away her tea and ran frantically towards Tangyue from the room. When they were completely unaware, a white object rushed straight towards the big tree in the courtyard, causing the leaves to shake off and sway. However, compared to the chaos in the courtyard, it was simply not worth mentioning. Taohong, shedding tears, helped Tangyue up. After seeing the arrows on the ground, she shouted loudly, "Someone, there's an assassin. Come, someone." Behind the pile of grass that no one noticed outside Zhuangzi, two women in black strong clothing pushed and shoved. The one who was biting Mantu in a big mouth said vaguely, "Little black fat man. Are we late? The loser will not die." The face called Little Black Fat Man was like frost. "Lu Mantu, are you stupid? You don't cry. You should still be alive. Do you want to tell the master?" Lu Mantu twisted his head. The Little Black Fat Man immediately gave her a big surprise. "Tell the master that you almost killed Miss Su because you had to buy Mantu and didn't arrive at the Chuang-Tzu in time." Lu Mantu lowered her eyes. She didn't want to be punished. "What should we do then?" Her voice was low. She stopped eating Mantu, and her round face was full of frustration. "Let's first figure out how much Miss Su is injured." The chubby little black sighed. She never imagined that Tangyue would be unharmed. After all, those people have always been ruthless, and any action they make has always been either death or disability. "Then I'll go and ask the doctor." Lu Mantu left Mantu in a hubbub and left. Little Black Fatty couldn't stop him in time, but it was also considered simple and effective. The old doctor was walking slowly with the medicine boy, feeling quite proud. She was truly the miss of the Marquis' mansion, generous in her actions, and gave 50 taels of silver for just a pair of sedatives. "A wealthy family is like having money," the old doctor sneered. "A young lady living on a farm spends money so recklessly. I don't know if the real hairpin family spends money like flowing water." "Old man." Lu Mantu leaned against a big tree and tried to pretend to be a bit of a master, but her voice was not compatible with the master with a bit of baby voice. The old doctor gave a faint glance and his footsteps did not stop for a moment. Seeing that he was ignored, Lu Mantu simply stopped pretending. He grabbed the old doctor by the collar and picked him up. "You old man, don't pay attention to me. I'm asking you, is Miss Su from the Su family seriously injured?" "Did she die?" he said, shaking as he spoke. The old doctor couldn't touch the ground with his feet, afraid that the sweet and ruthless little girl would throw him out. He was panicked and afraid, and didn't hear anything clearly. He said without hesitation, "I'm dead." "What? Unexpectedly dead?" In shock, the old doctor let go and fell unconscious. Lu Mantu was just about to shake the old doctor up. The little medicine boy cried and knelt to protect the old doctor. It was good not to die. Lu Mantu was relieved and looked at the old and young people on the ground. He scratched his head in embarrassment and said, "Do you want me to send it back for you?" Xiao Yaotong quickly shook his head, as if seeing some fierce beast. Lu Mantu did not force him to take out a copper plate from his waist and threw it to the little Yaotong. "She is really a good person," and Lu Mantu secretly praised her. Xiao Yaotong cried even louder. "Look, it has moved Xiao Yaotong so much." After taking the medicine, Tangyue's face gradually returned to normal, and her pounding heartbeat gradually stabilized. Traditional Chinese medicine is truly a treasure that can be passed down for thousands of years. Feeling less uncomfortable, Tangyue lifted the blanket and sat by the bed, ready to put on her shoes. "Mississippi. You can't get up. The doctor has instructed you to stay in bed and rest well." Tao Hong quickly grabbed Su Tangyue's sleeve and didn't let her get out of bed. Su Tangyue glared at her beautiful eyes, gesturing for Peach Blossom to let go, and then clenched her fist to show off half of her muscles. She loudly swore, "I can do it." Tao Hong felt a bit deafening as she listened, and her strength in her hands relaxed a bit. Su Tangyue seized this opportunity and took out her sleeve, happily running towards the yard with a small hoe. In no time, the woman's coquettish voice came. "Woo-woo, Tao Hong, come and support me." Su Tangyue leaned against Peach Blossom, supporting her still weak legs. Her hand movements were swift and smooth, digging pits, planting seeds, and burying soil. And Tao Hong thought in her heart that her young lady was frightened and needed to do such familiar things to soothe her heart. Moreover, the young lady was not injured, so she left it to herself. Fortunately, the assassin did not excel in learning, so she came. Otherwise, her young lady, after thinking about it, she even touched her tears with her sleeve. When the fairy palace appears next time, she will definitely pray well for the young lady. If Su Tangyue knew the dialogue in Tao Hong's heart, she might have to try to explain it. She didn't want it to be like this, she really didn't want it to be like this. But at the moment the arrow fell, the system suddenly prompted, deduct 58 days of health. Woo-woo, she worked hard for several months and once again returned to before liberation. Now there are only over 3 hours of life left. If we don't work, we won't even be able to survive at night. But we can't blame the system, after all, the system also saved her. Damn assassins. Su Tangyue muttered and cursed at them in a low voice. Did you find any clues in the courtyard? She is a young lady in the brothel who never leaves the main gate, nor has she offended anyone. Could it be that she was sent by her stepmother? Tao Hong called the boy to come and handed the young lady a mantu with a bite. It was not found under the big tree by our yard people. Su Tangyue took mantu and looked at it carefully, but she could not see anything special. This is ordinary mantu. But the assassin's mouth is really big. He bit half of mantu. Is it difficult for the assassin to be too hungry and squat on a tree to eat? You are truly dedicated. Pooh, pooh, how could you still praise the assassin? Is this assassin really here for her? But the only stepmother who has a grudge against her wouldn't want to kill her. Her brother is the crown prince, and killing her brother is the right thing to do. Can it be that she came for her father? Su Tangyue clapped her hands as if she had a sudden realization. Yes, yes. Her father's face turned extremely pale when he left today, so it must have been her own fault for him. Find someone to report my father. Be sure to speak more ominously and remember Madame Ho's attitude. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Who doesn't want to be firmly chosen? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Who doesn't want to be firmly chosen? The steward of Zhuangzi entered the Marquis' mansion as instructed, but the courtyard was bustling with chickens and dogs, so he could only wait on the side for now. Marquis, Huaiwen is just a child, please spare him this time. Zhang's eyes turned red and he firmly held Marquis Su's arm. He dares to go to the gambling house at a young age. If he doesn't discipline himself strictly, he can still get away with it in the future. Marquis Su looked angry and didn't show any mercy. He thought that his son grew up under his mother's lap, and even if he didn't become a talented person, he could still become a gentleman. Besides, Zhang was still the granddaughter of Prime Minister Zhang, who had read a lot of poetry and books. Perhaps he could teach his son a lot of knowledge and talents. Unexpectedly, Zhang was so used to this, and Su Huaiwen dared to linger in the gambling house at a young age. If he didn't discipline himself strictly, he might have gone against the odds. Marquis Su pushed away Zhang, who was crying, and swung his whip on Su Huaiwen's buttocks 10 times. Su Huaiwen's buttocks were blood-stained, and he cried until he fainted. He didn't even frown. After being raised, let him kneel in the ancestral hall for 7 days, and I will take care of him again in a short day. Marquis Su solemnly instructed Zhang. Zhang's heart was broken in tears, causing the servants to lift the soft sedan chair. At this moment, they were making a mess. Zhuangzi's steward cautiously knelt down and said, "Marquis, Miss has been assassinated." "What? Is Tangyue injured?" Marquis Su's voice suddenly rose. The steward gave a rough account of the situation. Miss was frightened and not injured. Lord Su breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Prepare your horse. Su-yi, if you don't guard my son today, we'll leave and settle down." Zhang said calmly with red eyes. Even though her son Wen made a mistake, he has now been punished. Now that he is so injured, Su-yi, the father, actually wants to visit a daughter who is only shocked. What assassination attempt? I'm afraid Su Tangyue is just talking nonsense to compete for favor. Otherwise, how could she be unharmed in such a dangerous situation? Is it also Su Tangyue who instigated Wen'er to go to the gambling house today? Wen'er has always been well behaved, how could she go to such a dirty place for no reason? Zhang's gaze at Zhuangzi's steward became increasingly fierce, as if he wanted to see through Su Tangyue's scheme. Marquis Su also had a headache at this moment. He had indeed taken a heavy action just now, and Huaiwen couldn't do without people. Fortunately, there was no major event at Tangyue's place. Steward Wang, send a group of guards to the hot spring villa. Tonight, we will clean up the villa and give the land deed to Mississippi. Please advise her to move over as soon as possible. I will send someone to carefully investigate this matter and let her not worry. Lord Su gave instructions one by one and sat at the stone table with a tired expression on his face. His heart was heavy, as if being weighed down by 1,000 pounds of heavy stones. How could a good life be like this? After listening to this farce, Su Tangyue also understood the reason why her father couldn't come over, but she felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. Who wouldn't want to be firmly chosen? But the stepmother is not at all guilty like this. She shouldn't have done this. Is it really my father who offended someone? I hope he can find out. Tao Hong, please have someone pack your luggage and move tomorrow. Su Tangyue shook the land deed in her hand. Soak in hot springs. The vegetables I planted today need to be taken good care of, and when they mature, they will be sent to the hot spring villa one by one. Su Tangyue's health is too low now, and she cannot let go of every small green vegetable that may turn into health. Miss, do you still have our dishes in the home mansion? Do you want to collect them together? Tao Hong was greedy for the taste of green vegetables and couldn't resist a single meal. Su Tangyue patted her forehead. How could she forget about the vegetables from the Marquis' mansion? They were also the vegetables she had worked hard to cultivate. Now that she is completely innocent, of course she has the consciousness of being a poor person and wants to take back every bit. Go tomorrow. On a dark and windy night, in a simple decorated mansion in central Beijing, two masked men in black kneel on the ground, talking word for word about the daytime assassination. Oh. So I still want to reward you for discovering something strange about Miss Su's body. A man wearing a golden mask lazily sat, playing with a crystal-clear jade cup in his hand, his tone even more casual. The black-clothed man kneeling was tense all over, bowing his head and afraid to say a word more. I will take the punishment myself, and Miss Su from the Su family, I will personally attend the meeting. The man brushed his sleeves and walked away, leaving the courtyard silent. The next morning, Su Tangyue took Tao Hong to the Marquis' mansion to withdraw her savings. She only wanted to do things quietly and then leave quietly, so she went straight to her own yard. Miss, the dishes you planted are much less, said Tao Hong in surprise. Could it be that the Marquis discovered this vegetable field? Su Tangyue shook her head. His father wouldn't come to his daughter's boudoir, he could only be the stepmother in charge of the backyard. Su Tangyue, after staying at Zhuangzi for a few months, you have become more and more unruly. Don't you know you need to go visit your elders first after returning to the mansion? Zhang sternly rebuked with a stern face. Su Tangyue disdainfully dug out her ear and sneered, "If you still want to be the Marquis' wife, just be honest with me. Our well water doesn't invade the river, and you can live for another 2 years." Zhang, the stepmother, has been feeling like she has been possessed by evil for the past 2 years. She and her brother have blocked her son's path as the crown prince, and they have been doing some small tricks every now and then, which has caused a lot of annoyance. She, Su Tangyue, is not a face person either. Anyone can pinch her twice. In her previous life, she was able to secure a stable position in the management team on her own, not just through hard work. Now she only wants to live a peaceful life before she has restrained her claws and teeth. Su Tangyue ignored Zhang's changing expression and only instructed the person she brought to collect the vegetables. Zhang immediately spoke up to stop. "Su Tangyue, what are you doing? Harvest the vegetables, haven't you been blind in a few days?" Su Tangyue joked. Of course, Zhang knew she was going to harvest the vegetables, but she had been planting them for so long, so she chose to harvest them at this time. "What does that mean? You've been moving away for several months now, and these vegetables have already been confiscated." Su Tangyue chuckled and said, "Perhaps Zhang's mind is sick. These dishes are no different from other dishes except for their better taste. She went crazy just to prevent herself from going as planned. I won't wait for my dad to come back and let him share the details, and let's calculate it together with the matter of you putting the stamp money." Su Tangyue is simple and straightforward. She doesn't want to get entangled with her anymore, so she needs to quickly go back and earn health points. How could she know about printing money? Zhang was caught in her little braid, and her angry etiquette and demeanor were ignored. With a finger like an onion, she said to her, "How did you know about this?" She personally watched every process of this matter and did it very closely. How could she be caught by Su Tangyue, a little girl? Could it be that someone around her was bribed? End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Hot Spring Villa. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Hot Spring Villa. Su Tangyue pursed her lips and fiddled with the handkerchief without directly answering her question. "Now you know my sincerity, don't you? As long as you don't offend me, I won't touch you either. Daki strictly prohibits the unauthorized release of seal money. If this matter were to be spread, not only would Zhang's reputation be damaged, but also her grandfather, Prime Minister Zhang, who was below 10,000 people, would be charged with lax governance. So unless absolutely necessary, she wouldn't take this matter to die with her. Speaking up today was just a reminder to her." Zhang Shi smashed his sleeves, suppressed his anger, clenched his fists and loosened them, calmed down a little, and then said, "Huaiwen likes this kind of food. For his sake, you should save some for him." Last time she found out that the vegetables Huaiwen wanted to eat were obtained by the Marquis from Su Tangyue. It was then that she remembered there was a vegetable field in her courtyard and began picking vegetables from here for Su Huaiwen to eat, which satisfied him. Today, she came here to pick vegetables and cook porridge for Wenner. Unexpectedly, Su Tangyue had to pick all of this vegetable. If it were as usual, it would be fine, but now that Huaiwen is sick, if he cuts off the food he loves, the wound may need to be healed for a few more days. Su Tangyue finally understood what was going on. No wonder this stepmother was so abnormal. It turned out she was doing it for her precious son. It's easy to say, although Su Huaiwen is not very competitive, at least he's my younger brother. He weighs 521 pounds and won't negotiate. Not every one of these dishes can be eaten by the imperial family and relatives. It would be great if we could take the opportunity to make a profit. Zhang looked at Su Tangyue's outstretched hand and wished she could hit it with a stick, but she was really afraid of angering her. Su Tangyue thought she was planting gold, but she thought of her son who was humming to eat vegetables in bed. She had to bite her back teeth and say, "Okay, give her 500 taels." Su Tangyue clapped her hands and said, 10 pounds is not enough to eat. If you buy more, I'll make it cheaper." Zhang snorted coldly and left with the person. The remaining Su Tangyue and Tao Hong burst out laughing. "Miss, it's so soothing. The thing Tao Hong has always wanted to do the most is for the young lady to vent her anger and cure the Marquis' wife. Now that her wish has come true, she can't help but speak her heart." Su Tangyue laughed heartily because she was angry and wanted to make her happier. She took a silver ticket and stuffed it into her hand. "Little Tao Hong, your share." Unexpectedly, Tao Hong's eyes turned red and her hand holding the silver ticket trembled slightly. Her voice was filled with sobs. "Miss, are you not taking me anymore?" Su Tangyue was surprised in her heart. What's the reason behind this? How can you give her money and still contact her not to want her? Is it possible that the Marquis' mansion has such rules? The puzzled speaker spoke. "How did you think I didn't want you anymore?" Tao Hong felt that she had guessed correctly and burst into tears. "That's how it's written in your script." Su Tangyue blushed with sweat. It seemed like there was a scene in her poor scholar and beautiful woman's notebook where the young lady and her lover wanted to elope, and before leaving, she gave a large sum of silver to her intimate maid. She wouldn't do such a foolish thing, but if Xie Zhishuan were such a handsome young master, she could barely accompany him for 2 days. Isn't it that after seeing my stepmother for so long, she fell ill with her silly illness? You are the #1 maid by your young lady's side. I got the money for nothing, so I wanted you to be happy together. Don't forget it. Su Tangyue's playful smile made her blush, and as she spoke, she pretended to go and grab the silver ticket. After hearing this, Tao Hong blushed with embarrassment, but she skillfully turned around and chuckled. The silver given and the water poured out were taught by Mississippi. I am Mrs. Best Servant and dare not disobey Mississippi. What a peach. Now I will embarrass your young lady. They are chasing after each other, very like a close little sisters. When Su Tangyue walked over, most of the little maids in the yard didn't really treat her, they just coaxed her to give more silver as a reward. Only Tao Hong, who is wholeheartedly devoted to her good, and even someone like her, should not be bound by the rules of the master and servant. Quickly, all the vegetables in the courtyard were picked and loaded onto the car. Su Tangyue didn't linger in this place at all, so she got on the carriage and went straight to the hot spring villa. Being a daughter is good. Su Tangyue sighed from the bottom of her heart. As long as there is a command, there is no need to do anything by hand. The servants only completed the big project of moving early and late. Capitalists are just comfortable. Tao Hong sincerely agreed. No matter what kind of person Miss is, she is definitely the best person. Leaving the capital, a little further south is the hot spring villa. The villa is backed by a small mountain and is filled with crabapple. At this time, it is in the flowering season, with colorful and beautiful colors. Miss, this place is so beautiful. It's 100 times better than our estate. After getting off the car, Tao Hong excitedly circled around. Su Tangyue wandered around the villa and said, "How is Baihu Mansion?" "Better than the Marquis' mansion." The manor was not large, and Su Tangyue quickly left. There was also a small courtyard next to it, and the sound of qin could be heard from the courtyard, which was very pleasant. We still have elegant neighbors. Su Tangyue leaned against the wall, closing her eyes and listening to the music. The steward of the manor bowed his hand and said, "There is a young couple living in another courtyard next to them. They seem to be in poor health and don't go out often, so they won't disturb you." Su Tangyue frowned lightly. Each of the other courtyards around the capital was worth £1,000, let alone this kind of hot spring villa. Those who can get it are either rich or expensive. Even the steward doesn't know the owner of another courtyard, so this person's identity may not be simple. But if she wants to stay here for a long time, she still needs to have good relationships with her neighbors and maintain friendly exchanges. Su Tangyue didn't wander outside for too long, so she entered the courtyard. The green willows lined the courtyard, the rockeries stood tall, the small bridges and flowing water, the clusters of flowers, and the elegant and quiet bluestone path hidden in the bamboo forest. What a Jiangnan spring breeze! Dad really enjoys it. Walking through the exquisitely carved pavilion and corridor, we arrived at her boudoir courtyard. The courtyard was large and empty, with only a thick and tall ancient tree, which was very convenient for growing vegetables. Entering the room, Su Tangyue, who had grown up in a pile of wealth, was surprised. There were plenty of good things in the room, such as yellow pear furniture, window curtains made of precious moon gauze that were hard to buy, and kiln porcelain bottles that turned green after rain. It seems that Dad's private treasury is very rich. Tao Hong, here, keep it well. Miss is happy today. Su Tangyue took out another silver ticket and handed it to Tao Hong. Tao Hong was immersed in the luxury of the young lady's new boudoir, and was once again smashed by the wealthy young lady's money. She was simply overjoyed. Miss, you are so kind to Peach Blossom. Miss has always had 1 or 2 silver coins of her own, and she should also give half to the maids. When encountering such a good master, she must double her kindness to Miss in the future and not disappoint her kindness. End of this chapter.